Hello, my name is Tamara, and today we are exploring the question, where does belly dance come from? Now, I get this question a lot, and the answer is a little more complicated than you might guess. Belly dance does not have a single origin. It comes from a broad range of places around the Middle East, North Africa, and the Eastern Mediterranean. First, let's talk about where the word belly dance comes from. So the word belly dance does not come from the cultures that practice it. This word came from French and British colonizers who saw these dances and said, look, the belly's dancing, and they called it dance du ventre or dance of the belly. And this kind of exotic label stuck with the dance, and with it, it kind of flattened these rich cultural practices from many different places into a single term. It erased the nuance and the history, the variety of cultural and regional styles that it came from. What we call belly dance today is actually a wide range of dances from the Middle East, North Africa, and the Eastern Mediterranean. And some of these dances include the bellydance dance in Egypt, shabi dance, which is a street dance in Egypt, another dance called Saidi, which is a folkloric dance in Egypt. There's also dabki, which comes from Lebanon and Palestine. In Arabic, the dance is commonly referred to as raqs sharqi, which translates to Eastern dance. So for centuries, these dances were part of everyday life. These dances were done in social, improvisational settings, at weddings and birthdays and parties, and these dances were separated by gender. So men would dance for men and women would dance for women, and yes, men belly dance, or it's just called regular dance. It's just a part of joy and celebration of life. And originally the dances were not performances, just practices of living culture and celebrations. However, in 1890 and the early 1900s, the first cabaret opened in Egypt, in Cairo. And this visionary, her name was Badia Masabni, opened the first cabaret. And she's the one credited for bringing the dance into a stage and fusing local traditions with more Western aesthetics. So these Western elements were applied to belly dance, such as choreography, a choreographed routine, which is a Western idea. And then this now famous two-piece bra and belt costume was created for the stage. Other Western aesthetics were integrated into the stage performance, like more dramatic lines and pointed hands and feet. And this dance was in part shaped by French and British colonizers who were in Cairo and wanted to see performances. Meanwhile, around the same time, belly dance came to America, and it arrived in the US for the first time in 1893 at the Chicago World's Fair. A dancer called Little Egypt drew in a lot of attention in crowds with her exotic moves. And these performances ignited fascination and sometimes even moral panic. Some Americans were like, oh, this is inappropriate, whatever. In America, but they loved seeing it anyways, whatever, yeah, who knows. And eventually in the 1940s and 50s, belly dance made it into films, into movies in Hollywood, and this interesting feedback loop happened where Egypt would imitate Hollywood and Hollywood would imitate Egypt, and these two cultures kind of echoed or were shaped by this Orientalist fantasy, this fantasy of this exotic other. So these shows and cabarets in Egypt were matched by these fantasies that French and British colonizers had of this mystical East or this exotic other. And this dance was really reshaped to satisfy this gaze and geared towards, of course, a more male gaze. So the movements became more seductive and choreographed. And at the same time, aesthetics of the dance adjusted to more Western ideals of pointed arms and hands, lifted chest, and more dramatic lines. Costumes became skimpier and flashier, reflecting these Orientalist fantasies. And the dance became more of a show, showcasing this spectacle or this trope of an exotic harem girl. So, in this translation from the common people to the stage, some scholars argue, well, is belly dance authentic to the culture, knowing that it had all of these other influences from the very beginning? And people argue that it is still authentic to the culture because these shows that Badia Masamni produced were also available to the common Egyptian people, and these shows were produced, danced, and designed by Egyptians for still a largely Egyptian audience. But something happened with this dance, translating it from its original community roots to the stage and to these more Western ideas. And in general, something in the soul of the dance was lost. Its spontaneity, its earthiness, and its deep sense of presence. Colonial influences reframed it from a cultural expression to a performance, from a connection with people, with community, to more of a display. And this display was mostly for the male gaze. So what would it look like if we decolonized belly dance? It might look like this. Dancing would be fully clothed in shared community spaces. You would be dancing more for yourself and your own pleasure instead of performing. You would let go of any rigid choreography and return to more improvisational roots. Dancing would be done in groups as a collective experience. Movements would be slower, earthier, more intuitive and sensual. The original dance had a lot of repetition. It wasn't very showy or flashy. It wasn't done to perform or impress, but it was done to like feel the moment and really express the music, the moment, whatever you were feeling. And in this way, it's perfectly natural for this dance to look different on everyone, for everyone to do it in a little bit differently in their own style. And this would be about reclaiming the dance as a way of being in your own sense of power and pleasure and presence. In summary, where does dance come from? It comes from a whole range of countries around the Middle East, North Africa, and the Mediterranean. It is originally a social improvisational dance and has some folkloric traditions. And the truth is, it's still evolving. Every dancer today has a choice between repeating this Oriental fantasy, performing for the male gaze, or to reimagine this dance as a living, breathing, deeply personal art form that they use to get in touch, to connect with themselves, to celebrate, to experience joy, to express. I don't know about you, but I prefer the latter. If this sparked something in you, or if you learned something new, please subscribe, share, and let's reimagine belly dance together. Thank you.